Hello? Before Kathleen starts, I need you all to grab your cell phones. Text one person in there, say, get over here quick, this is going to be awesome.
I like her.
Praise God. I would like to just introduce Don and Cherie Hanks. Frank and I have come to know them probably about 4 years ago. And I don't know, five years ago?
Our kids were in second grade when we met.
Yeah, I don't remember
In
that.
fact, our kids played with the Dolphins together in the Mighty Mites or whatever.
Dakota was on the Seahawks.
Oh, no, Seahawks.
The Seahawks. No,
Yeah, they went to second grade together.
And they went to second grade together. Man, we are old.
So anyway, but we really got to know each other our Micah and Dakota's senior year in football. And we just started building this relationship, and it's been a process. I know this couple well, and I know from where they've been, what they've been through, and where they are now. And I want to tell you that it's incredibly wonderful to see a true miracle of transformation of what God can do. And I believe you're going to leave here full of hope. One of the things that we see in not only in our church but in our culture is there's so much chaos, there's so much confusion. And one thing we do know is that Jesus Christ is the answer to everything.
Yes.
That He has the remedy, He has the answer, and that He is actually our standard of what normal is.
Amen.
And so when we begin to put our eyes on Him and we begin to allow ourselves to be transformed, it's amazing the image begins to be birthed in us. So I would like to just introduce them as they share their story from where they were to where they are now. So we would just like for Don to start, and go ahead.
We were discussing on who was going to
Oh,
start.
yeah, I'm sorry, I just took the lead on that.
Okay, let me do this.
Okay.
How would you like to start?
How would you like to start?
How would you like to start?
Well, those that know us like you and gratefully my, these lights I can't see out there very well, but my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are here, and I'm so grateful for them to come here to listen to us, Cherie's brother. And we talked about the struggles that we've had in our marriage, and the struggles in our marriage started immediately. And as Cherie was saying earlier, that many of our struggles usually stem back to things that have maybe happened to us as a child. Like my parents,
When you say my parts, I won't have anything to say. Just saying.
Okay, go ahead.
By the way, they had a lot to say this morning, so they have plenty.
I grew up in a very, very, very abusive household, and my biological father and mother had a very physically abusive relationship. My father, would beat my mother in front of us, and physically open and closed hand abuse. And as a young child, I was frozen. I had no idea how to react. I was crying, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it actually developed an emotional wound for me on how to deal with a relationship. And that kind of carried over into our marriage. I was able to actually, because I vowed at that time never to abuse my wife physically. But what I couldn't control or didn't control is how I abused her emotionally, verbally, and my behaviors. And it carried over. I had no idea I was doing that. I thought I was living my life for her. I can remember talking to my brother-in-law who's here, Mark, and saying that I'm doing everything I can for her. And this is how bad it was. I would paint a bad picture of his own sister to him. And I'm sorry for that. But I was operating in my woundedness, and it was all about what she was doing wrong, what if she could say this, if she would do this, then things would be okay. If she wouldn't leave me, then things would be okay. If she would just stay at home and cook me a meal. Everything would be okay. But in reality, where I was failing is I was reacting to her. She was able to trigger me, and it had nothing to do with her. It goes back to my childhood.
As he was talking, I was thinking about different things that he was saying, and he was right. He had such a great pseudo, and I'm not supposed to talk about him, but I'm going to. He had such a great pseudo, which means to the rest of the world, he was incredible. He had such charisma. Everybody loved him, including my family. And so I couldn't even go to my family and let them know what was going on. Even when I left him, I went to my mom and I said, this is what's happening. And she says, you need to get back in that house. Your job is to be his wife. And it was those kind of things that I grew up with. When I was 13 months born after my brother into a predominantly male home. I was the only sister of my 3 brothers. And it was a male-dominated house. My mom's French, and males are very, very, very important. Females are not. So I was unwanted in pregnancy. I was an unwanted pregnancy. I was unwanted at birth. I was a girl. And I felt that way. I felt that rejection. I felt defective as an infant. And such as your mind thinketh, so are you. We create our DNA by the way we think. So I rewired myself, or wired myself, to believe that I was defective and that I couldn't do anything right unless I was a boy. So I played basketball with the boys. I played baseball with the boys. I wanted to become a boy to make my family happy, to be accepted, to be approved. I was a musician. I played music, but my parents didn't come to hear me play in the band. They went to watch me play basketball or baseball with the boys. So I grew up in that world and that woundedness. And we were also in a very abusive home where our parents fought a lot. We didn't know until we were all adults that our parents weren't even married. So that was a whole new world for us. So we grew up in that kind of an abusive arrangement or home, and we believed that about ourselves, and we brought that into our marriage. Without knowing it, we found somebody who had our same woundedness, so that we figured we could fix them or they could fix us.
Or at least the same level of woundedness. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the same type. For example, I had kept a secret for over 40 years from everybody in the world. My parents, and now this is where the transparencies come that you were talking about. I was ashamed to say things in the past, and I thought I was the only one. And what I found out that there are more people out there that have these type of wounds and are just quiet about it and silent. And I think a lot of that came from when my parents, I'd see the abuse my dad would do, and it shut me up. But my parents would go visit some of their friends when I was young, and they would always say, go play with, they had a high school, their friends had a high school young man that was in high school, and and they told me to go play with them. And so we'd go out, they lived on a farm, and every time we went over and visited them, that young man would sexually abuse me. And I would not tell anybody this because I was ashamed, and I lived in a world where I'm the only one this is happening to. What would they think of me if I said something? And so it wasn't but 6 months ago that I had ever told anybody about this. And it's because I started healing inside myself, and I know that we have a forgiving God. And what's kind of away from that is it's also allowed me to forgive that person that did that to me, and it's genuine. It's genuine forgiveness, and which for me is a miracle. But a lot of this, why we're kind of preluding with this, is because a lot of the way we acted as adults together stems from the way it happened in our household, and we found that these type of wounds and injuries are generational. And I'm not blaming my dad, my biological father. because the same things probably happened to him as a kid,
Right.
and so on and so forth. And through hope and through prayer, we're finally at a point where we can stop that generational sin. And we're doing it. And I'm not perfect at it yet. I haven't arrived at it yet, but I'm getting better every single day at it. But I kind of want to go a little bit more. I don't want to take all your time. We eloped after knowing each other for 6 weeks. So we never really had a relationship.
I was good looking.
Hey, she's still good looking.
He's healed.
But so we got 6 weeks. We eloped. We went to San Diego, and I just gotten out of the military. I was still in the reserves, and then, you know, it was almost instantly we couldn't agree, couldn't communicate, and she would clam up and close down and wouldn't talk. That's her survival mode.
Well, I was wounded as an infant where I couldn't, when my woundedness started, it was as an infant. And as an infant, we can't talk. So when I get triggered, I don't talk.
And so out of my woundedness, she wouldn't talk to me. I was taking it as rejection. And my parents were divorced as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could go on my wounds, but that she was rejecting me then. And she wanted just to get away, and which is probably the best thing she could have done, but I wouldn't let her. She was driving away on her blue and white Caprice. Mark probably remembers that car. And I jumped up on the hood, and I stood up, and I smashed the window in with my foot. And
I drove around with a block with him sitting on my car.
and I'm just preluding this to let you know my behaviors and out of the woundedness. Those were actions out of woundedness, because when I was young, the maturity level to deal with a crisis or a conflict never developed, because they were ceased. They were arrested at a very, very young age. And so I was acting like a 5-year-old, hopping up on her car and breaking stuff. And that's not the only thing that I ever broke in our household. I did vow as a kid never to physically hurt her. And that I held true to, but I still, you know, obviously that's not appropriate behavior. And I yelled at her, and I just destroyed things. I remember one time we were leaving in Old Town Cottonwood. I was mad at her, and I physically ripped this wooden screen door off of our house just because of anger. And man, it's just horrible. I don't even like to think about it anymore, because it's not who I am now. It's what I am now. And thank God that I've come a long ways from that.
You know, at the first service, you made a comment about where you were and what you were going through, and almost everything you just spoke of right now. You talked about that in the first service, but you also mentioned in the first service that in a roundabout way that your actions did something to her. What did it do to her? In other words, as far as her in relating to you, her wanting to be around you,
well, yeah,
the kids.
She, you know, and who would want to be around that? Who would want to be around that? You know, fortunately, she has hope and maybe stubbornness and didn't want to give up on something, but she didn't want to be around me, and it drove her away. I referred to a picture. We were on the beach, and I was taking a picture with the ocean in the background with Cherie and the kids, and they're all huddled up next to her, and it was like an awesome picture. And then I go, okay, get a picture of me. And I didn't realize this until, you
saw
know,
the picture.
Well, no, not till I saw the picture, but this just till recently, till after life skills things I went through, that I stood there, and all the kids were kind of like, and they were leaning away from me. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them were leaning away, like they didn't want to be near me, because obviously I was you know, they're probably thinking of me the same way I thought of my father. And even though I wasn't physically abusive, guess what? I passed it on anyway. And I mean, now it's just, I'm just thankful for the opportunity to recover from things like that. But there's many times she left me. Why don't you talk about that?
What time?
Yeah, there were quite a few times.
Well, I was going to say there was just little stories that come to my head as we go. I was 7 months pregnant with Alexia, and we were going to San Diego for a military weekend. He was still in the reserves, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and he is screaming and yelling at me about getting off on the wrong turn. He turned wrong, and I kept saying, you need to go there, and he would not listen to me at all. So we're in San Diego, in the middle of a freeway, 3 o'clock in the morning. He stops the car and gets out. And I'm sitting there going, okay, now what do I do? And so he goes, if you're so smart, you take us there. So
She got there within like 5 minutes. That was, I should have learned or should have known or I wasn't smart enough to catch on at that point. There was something I wrote in between the two that I thought of. I said, not possessing adequate skills, we use anger, control, and power to try and get our needs met.
That's good.
And that's the way I was living. I was using those anger and control and power to try and get my way.
You talked a little bit too in the first service. Explain to everybody how you were codependent on her, what that looked like.
Man, oh man, my happiness was totally dependent on her. I truly thought that I was living my life and doing everything I absolutely could to make her happy. And it had no reflection of my behaviors though. And when she was happy, I was happy. If she wanted to do something, I was all in on it. But I was so codependent that I didn't realize it. It also could be considered denial that I had any problems at all with this. I was in a lot of deep denial, shame-based, reactive life, and I always used to, want and think that, if she would just say this, then everything's okay. Well, if she just does that, then our relationship will be fine. The kids will be good. If she just stopped doing that, and I made it all about her. And saying that, in my mind, she was the one that was at fault, and that she was the one that needed to be fixed. And
I believe that too. I believe it was my fault, and that I was doing something wrong that made him so angry. And I would do everything possible. I believe in a covenant marriage, and I fought for it for 26 years, and we've been married for 26 years. And I believed in that, but I also, through the process of working with Kathleen, realized that God did not want me to live in this kind of abusive relationship. But it took forever. I thought it was my fault. I would do whatever I could with the kids to make sure they were where they needed to be, so he could be happy, so that he would not blow up when he got home. I tried to make everything okay for him, but in the process, I was basically a prisoner of my own home. I wasn't allowed to have friends. I could never go anywhere without him with me. I could never go out just a date with friends. I was not allowed. If I did, I was going to pay for it when I got home.
It sounds horrible now, but it's true, because I lived in a world of jealousy and insecurity. Mm-hmm. And I always would ask myself, why am I not the most important person in her life? Why doesn't she want to do that with me? And it's, a lot of it was denial, and now I understand it, and why she stayed with me so long.
God.
Yeah.
But God.
Yeah.
This morning, the first service, you talked about how, with this dysfunction that was happening within the relationship, how it touched your kids. Can you share that with us?
Again, everything's brought down generational, and what we got from our parents, we then pass down to our children, as well as our own dysfunction. And as I was talking about earlier, we're kind of bipolar. He explodes and is very expressive, and I'm internal. Everything goes quiet. I'm a thinker. I think a lot. People want to think I'm ignoring them, but I'm really thinking. And in that situation, because of that, and I was blaming myself, I became suicidal. I was depressed all of my life. I don't really remember a time in my life that I wasn't depressed. Several attempts on my life, suicidal. And lot of anxious, a lot of anxiety that I pass down to my children, and all three of my children deal with anxiety, and they're working through that now too. But we pass that down. We pass all our DNA gets passed down.
And it's not like to say that, to blame our parents. It's just that it creates an understanding. We're not trying to paint a bad picture of our parents. It's just that we understand what
It's a perception too of how we saw things, and how we saw things is our reality.
Yeah, and I got lots of stories of how we messed up, and or especially me. But I've come to realize that a trigger that used to ignite me to abusiveness or a tirade, that it's not. I empowered her and other people to trigger me like that, and I realized that nobody else has that control over me. They should not have that control. If she said something that triggered me in the past, what it is doing is it's touching a wound from my childhood. That's where the trigger comes from, but she's just the one that said it, and what happens is I reacted on her, and it had nothing to do with her. And so I've learned is to be in control of my own emotions and my own thoughts and my own words. And if somebody says something that triggers me, I'm able to do a timeout and find out where that source really is, whether it be my wife, my kids, or people in general.
I'm going to take it back to our kids. Our kids grew up in an abusive family. It wasn't abusive like he hit me or things like that. They were telling me some stories in between services about how the police have visited our house several times, on several occasions. And then Alexia actually told me she was trying to decide which parent to go with. And I'm like, going, what? It's a no-brainer.
Sorry to have you back.
But anyway, our children, as soon as they turned 18, they were out of our house. Well, they were still in high school, but as soon as they could get out, they were out. Alexia was kicked out by her dad, and it was a very, very ugly situation. My son, he graduated from high school on Friday. On Saturday morning, he was out. He was gone. My daughter, the youngest, Allie, she left as soon as she turned 18. Actually, I think it was August. It was a month before she turned 18, we left. And because she told me, she's laying in bed, she goes, Mom, I can't live like this anymore. Else you're going with me, or I'm going by myself, but we're leaving. And so she got us out of the house. Saved my life again.
It sounds like, maybe everything's on me, but it doesn't matter, because I've learned to own my own
See, and that's the key right
faults.
there.
What I've done wrong, I need to own that, and she may need to work on her stuff on that, and I may not even need
What
to know
stuff?
about it. Well, the one or two things that she did. But I'm okay with that, because I'm here to grow and to become a better husband, father, mentor, or just a person in general. And I want to get better. I want to improve, and I want to continue improvement. So it doesn't bother me if it looks like that, I've made these errors. I have found, though, through going through the classes, I'm not alone.
That's right.
I am not alone in things that have happened to me and my behaviors. And many people in these classes would do anything they could to have their wife sitting next to them like I am right now. And I'm grateful that this is where we're at and not in another spot.
My woundedness, although it sounds like that I had it all together, I didn't. I would hide, I would run, I was scared all the time, and I didn't put any boundaries on. I allowed this behavior to continue all these years. If I would have known what I know now, our relationship would have been healed years ago. But I did not put the boundaries down. I allowed the behavior to continue, and I allowed it to be passed down to my children. I mean, there were times when he was almost at Fifth City with my son Dakota, and I had to stand in between them and tell Dakota to go, instead of placing the boundary and say, this is not going to happen in my home.
unless you guys had something else, what'd you have, Frank?
Well, I see the desperation is
Yeah.
taking place.
Yeah.
And before we go there, because it led you to find an answer. But I got to tell you guys, though, when I look at their family, and like I said, we've known them for a long time. And for me, from the outside, not knowing them as well as I do now, I looked at a couple who had businesses, put it all together, 3 incredible kids. And they do have 3 incredible kids. You have the oldest, Alexia, who, by the way, you've seen her here before doing some of our productions. And she's very, very creative. She's very, very good. We need you back up here. Number 2, you have Allie, who is going in a couple of weeks. She has a full ride to a university in West Virginia to play soccer. God, I mean, she's an incredible young lady. In fact, one of the coaches at Mingus said that she is by far the best female athlete to come out of Mingus. And then you have Dakota, who played football with our son, and an incredible, incredible kid, bright young man, just got married. So you have some incredible kids, and yet, you know, this is what I saw. I did not understand the dysfunction, but I did see when Don and I would meet, all of a sudden he started becoming transparent. Things started changing. And out of that desperation led you to find the answer. What's the answer?
Well, before you do that, I want to really emphasize something you said is I was living a life, a pseudo life. I was portraying something what I knew society wanted to see. And I wasn't living my real self. And I was pretty good at that game. I was really good at it, but my family knew the real me. And I'm not the only one that I found that does it, but I own what I did, and I'm moving away from that. And but it was real, and maybe a lot of people here know me, and you know, I'm not that pseudo that I was, but I'm real now.
Remember that game in Chino Valley?
Okay, you saw. Frank has actually seen some of that.
Again, this was my perspective of this family. We're in Chino
I
Valley.
started this.
Yeah, she did, by the way.
It was her fault.
We're in Chino Valley, and our sons, now they play for Mingus, they're playing against Chino Valley. And so after we scored a touchdown, she started playing the Mingus song on her saxophone.
It was a music box.
No, I'm sorry, the music box. That's
It was
right,
the music box.
The boom box. And their AD didn't like this. So all of a sudden he comes around and he tells us to stop. Well, okay, you need to know Sharif. Because we scored another touchdown. Guess what was turned up all the way? The boom box. Here comes the AD. And it happened a couple times. Well, to make a long story short, he came up that it was against the AIA rules and this, that, or whatever. And so here comes the AD. And so he's talking to us. And he's getting a little bit, you know, forceful. Don looked at him. And as the AD starts walking away, Don said this. I'm not going to use the exact word, but he said, I'm glad you're walking away, because if not, I'd be kicking your butt. And I'm like, that's not the family I know. But I saw a glimpse of his anger. That was a good one, by the way.
I wouldn't do it now, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway,
The desperation led
yeah,
to...
it's desperation.
And we were desperate. We've been to counselors, tons of money on marriage therapists, psychologists, counselors. We went to a marriage encounter thinking that we were going to pull this all together, and this one weekend was going to change our life. And they talked a lot about covenant, covenant, covenant. But, and it worked for maybe 24 hours. Yeah, we actually, at the encounter, at the thing, we're in Tucson, he leaves me without a car. I'm calling Jennifer. Jennifer! But, yeah, so we went through the encounter. We tried everything. We were desperate. And we were at the point that I actually left him and went to New Mexico. And while I was there, I was telling a friend who just was blown away that this was even happening in our life. And she just kept looking at me going, "What are you saying?" She goes, "I've known you all your life. I've never heard these stories." And on the way home, I got an audiobook, and it was called The Emotionally Destructive Marriage. And I started listening to it on the way home. and I was given hope. And then I found, I looked through it, and it was a story about the abuser, what happens from the abuser's point of view. And he led us to Life Skills, and we read then Dr. Paul Heckstrom's books. And that then started us on our road to recovery. Actually, I was going to go with the girls. I was going to take the girls, and we were going to go to Colorado, and we had it all planned, everything was going to go, and it just wasn't fitting. It just wasn't fitting, and I just was kind of giving up. And I told Kathleen, I said, this is the answer. This is just not the avenue. I know this is the answer. And so then I found out that there was a place in San Diego, and I said, and I'm dealing with severe depression and suicidal ideations. At night, I'm sitting on my bed with a gun in my hand, just thinking, I got to get Allie through school. Got to get Allie through school. And I can't do this, but as soon as she's done, I'm done. I'm not living like this anymore. And I'm not feeling like I'm in this much pain. People should not live in this much pain. And so we got a hold of, or I gave him the phone number, and I said, hey, well, we weren't together then. I was living actually at my daughter's house. And I said, and he was starting the dating process. He was really struggling with the fact that we weren't home. He had the dog. So I gave him the phone number, and he called him, and 3 days later, we were in San Diego.
Yeah, back it up just a little bit. I also read that book, and while she was doing it, it's actually a fairly easy read. It didn't take me long to read it, and as I finished the book, my perception of the author, which was a male, I says, this guy's a wimp. That's exactly what I thought, and really he was hitting home, but she talked to me about going to Life Skills, and so I did call them, and the first thing that they told me at Life Skills is that we're not marriage counselors. We only work on the individual. And I
tell him why you're going to Life Skills.
And so he said he works on the individual, and I said, that's awesome. This is what my wife needs. It was genuine. That's truly the way I felt. I was sincere. I said, man, Sheree can really benefit from this. And so we did go. We went. It was an investment of time. And once I got in there and started the Life Skills process and the training, he gave me some reality checks, and I never realized how much in denial I was. And what he was able to do is touch those wounds I had as a child and work through those so I can develop emotionally and mature emotionally instead of staying at a 5 or 6 year old when I had a lot of those wounds occur.
And we're not going to say this was easy. It was work. I remember the first time when he came out of his first class, and he looked at me and there were tears in his eyes, and I knew that, oh no, I'm going to pay for it tonight. And I just grabbed Allie and said, we're going to the ocean. We're leaving him home. We're leaving him in the hotel. We're heading to the ocean. And it's work. And by the third day, he was ready to quit, because it starts going to your woundedness. It goes to your pain in childhood, and it starts. You have to start dealing with that. You have to go back there. You have to work through that in order to grow up. And Romans 12:2 says that you got to renew your mind. And by the renewing of your mind, renew is actually a Hebrew word that means anakonis, which means to grow up. So as you grow up, your mind is being renewed. And we had to grow up. We had to go back through our pain. We had to face our pain. That's where it was hard. You have to face your pain. You have to face the pain that you passed down to the next generation. And then your goal is, okay, I got to get better because I got to fix them. And then you realize, no, I got to help them fix themselves.
But see on that issue of renewing.
It's about it's constant renewal. Has to be constant renewal, which Life Skills gives me the tools to do that. But when we finished the first phase of our Life Skills program, I stopped doing my using the tools and stopped doing my self-talk and stopped using what I learned in Life Skills. And then all of a sudden my perception changed, and all of a sudden, Sheree's picking on me. Why is she saying that about me? What is she doing? She's trying to make me look bad in front of the kids. All of a sudden it became about her actions again And it was just like I regressed to the point before I even went to life skills. You said something pretty profound.
Well, as a first service, when they said that, it really hit me. The Bible, when it talks about in Romans 12, to renew our minds so that we may understand the will of God for our lives. And as soon as he stopped renewing his mind with the tools that were given him, he went back to where he was set free from. And so all of a sudden he reverts back and he's doing things that he used to do before he got set free. And so what we have to do, churches, we have to continually renew our minds on a daily basis. When we don't, yeah, we may be set free, but when we don't, guess what? We go back to where we came from. It's like going back to Egypt. And so I love what you're talking about as far as going back. You started using your tools again,
yeah, well,
and things changed.
It got, in my mind, it got so bad that she was just, everything was my fault again. Everything was about me as far as being wrong, and she was picking on me. I moved out. I left.
So this is like in December, and actually that happened in January, but in December it was getting ugly. Like really, this past December, it was getting really ugly. He was starting to treat me the same way, and I'm thinking, we've tried everything, nothing works. But I was not willing to give up, and I was going to fight through this because I noticed change in me. I noticed that I wasn't having seizures anymore. I was able to handle stuff at work. I wasn't being triggered like I used to be triggered, where I was hiding and running. I was able to stand up. And so in December, I decided I'm done. I'm getting a divorce, and covenant or what, I'm really sorry, God, but this is what I'm doing. And I called my facilitator, Debbie, over there, and I said, Debbie, this is where we're at right now. I'm really sorry. I'm getting a divorce. And she said, congratulations, you just graduated. She goes, you stood up for yourself. She goes, follow through. And so I walked in, I was sitting in the parking lot right out here when I was talking to her on the phone. So I walked into Kathleen and I said, Kathleen, I'm getting a divorce. And Kathleen says, good. She goes, how can we help you? And they weren't upset with Don. All of a sudden they saw that I was strong and I was going forward, and I wasn't going to allow myself to be abused anymore. And that they had never ever was anything against Don with everybody that we worked with Jennifer, with Mima, with these guys. Nothing was ever against Don. But it was about me getting on my feet. And so, but I wasn't going to do it in December because his father left him at Christmas time. Our Christmases were hell for 26 years. Our kids hated Christmas. Everybody's supposed to love, except for Alexia. But you're supposed to love Christmas. I dreaded them. I dreaded Christmas. I didn't even want to put up a tree this year. But we were in January, we were on our way back from a soccer game, and Dakota and Allie are in the back seat of the car. And he starts in on me. And I knew it was coming. They say an abused woman knows within 3 or 4 months when the abuse is going to take off again. And I knew it. I knew we were in trouble. And so before he started, he started going. And I turned to him and I said, I want a divorce. And we've talked about this before, but this time the divorce papers were sitting underneath the seat of my car where I was sitting on, and I pulled them out. And I said, they're signed. I'm just going to go ahead and hand them in, and they'll be, we're going to go forward with this.
I think they're still there. But what she said about boundaries, it's part of our healing is to have healthy boundaries and consequences. Not only for her to me, but also back to her. And because that way, they have to be healthy boundaries though, because people can set unhealthy ones. And that really made it come real to me. And I called my facilitator, and he says, just whatever you do it honorably. And it was kind of cool. He didn't scold me, didn't say what I should be doing. So when he said, do whatever you do it honorably, I started doing my work again. And
back to the self-talk.
About self-talk and using my tools from life skills. And then I kind of realized, I've been whatever you beeped off earlier when you were describing me. And that, I was in the wrong again. And so I moved back home. But this time, when I moved back home, we started from like the very beginning, like we had never, like our first introduction, like we first met. So we were just first starting to date again.
So you asked her
Yeah, well, yes, and I asked her to go steady with me, and
And there was no hanky-panky.
yes, we were, and
For those of you who don't understand, no sex. Go ahead.
yes, and because as a child, I was injured sexually. I was injured sexually as a child, and I think it has an effect on your sexual relationship or intimacy in marriage. At least it did in ours, and that was from my childhood wound, and so I thought the only time that she really cared about me is if we were intimate, physically, but
And I felt abused and used.
because of that.
Sure.
And so we were gonna, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna start from scratch, no sexual contact, and I get kisses and hugs, and that was it. And
Very little.
yeah, she didn't like to hug, so we started the dating process, and I asked her to go steady with me a few times, and you
I said no.
and until I could ask her in the right manner. And I eventually got to the right manner, and she felt safe enough to say that she was going steady with me. And then time went on again, and I said, hey, let's get married.
I said no.
And then I said, hey, here's a flower, let's get married.
I still said no.
So I had to ask her in the right way. And I,
A lot of you followed us on Facebook and saw the process of our new relationship unfolding.
and it was, it was fun again. It was fun being around her, and there was no sex in this. And this was months of going on. And then, I knocked it out of the park when I asked her to marry me. It was a good one.
I said yes.
And she said yes, but still no hanky-panky. And then Frank and Kathleen were a big part of this. We actually set up a date to actually have a wedding because, like I said earlier, she didn't get to have a formal wedding with me, a formal marriage. We eloped. We were in some guy's backyard in jeans, and
AAA Wedding Chapel.
that's what it was. And
First one in the book.
and man, Frank and Kathleen helped us with that. They officiated it. Mark and Mary Ann came to it. Our closest people that are important to our lives came to it, and it was like it was the real thing from the start.
Let them know how you felt when you saw your bride-to-be on the balcony.
Okay, well, I didn't get to see her on the balcony because all the bridesmaids came in from a different direction, and then all of a sudden, above me on this balcony, which I couldn't see, there was this amazing saxophone music coming from there, which Cherie's a very accomplished saxophone player. And I go, wow, that's awesome. And I go, that must be Cherie up there playing. And then she came down to the side, and I was standing kind of under the balcony, and I saw her in a white gown walking down the stairs, and I cannot describe, I can't give words to the feeling I had where this emotion flowed through me from top to bottom, toe to head. It was almost like the first time I ever felt love in my life. And I mean, I was doing everything I could to not all of a sudden just bawl in front of everybody, but I had tears and I was very emotional. Frank got to see it because he was up close, but it was just overwhelming. It's like the power of God feeling when you come through, but it was all love for her. And from that day on, I mean, it was another testimony to me that she's the one, this was all worth it. And that feeling that I had then was just the beginning from where we are today. Because that feeling from that day, because I've done my work every day since then, has grown every day. I've never been in a situation or a relationship or anything that it's growing every day, that it's coming closer, and what I'm beginning to see too as I mature emotionally, and I'm still probably quite young, but I never realized how much my wife does around the house. I always used to think, why can't she do this too?
That's good.
Why can't she do something else? And now I come home and I go, man, the dishes are done. I mean, I was going to do them for her. Oh, I got clothes in my drawer that are clean already. But and it's like, what do I do to deserve this? And she does a lot more than that. it's not her job. I know it's not her job, but she does it. And there's so many more things. And the way she's with the kids, I'm impressed by her daily.
You know, I've had the honor of doing a lot of weddings. And I was telling the first service that there's only been maybe but a handful where you see the glow on the bride and the groom, their countenance, how, you know, it's just different. The love, I mean, they just emanate this love. And like I said, just a handful, but this is one of them. On that day, when she was coming down, I remember I looked at him, and you could just see his face. It was like melting as she was coming down the stairs. Guys, it was incredible. All that devastation they went through led to a desperation, which led to that incredible event that we were able to, there's a picture of them two up there, able to be part of. It was an incredible day, guys, just to see what God had done. But one thing, I don't know if you noticed, but ever since they started, talking about what they've gone through, one thing was evident throughout the whole time. It may be just but a glimmer, but hope never left. Sometimes we tend to give up too quickly because of this and because of that. Hope never left. And because of that, they kept on going forward.
Yeah, that's true. The hope thing, we wanted it to work. There was a level of love that we had for each other. We didn't want failure. We had faith. We believed in God, and we've hoped for probably 25 years that our marriage would get better. We've hoped and hoped and hoped, and at the end, our hope was fizzling.
Glimmer. Yep.
But I have to admit that I never prayed as hard or as earnestly and verbally to God as I did when it was just about over. And maybe I was never ready to hear the answer. And the answer, sometimes it doesn't happen overnight. I can't. Your answers to my prayers, in this case, required that I put in some time and that I had to work. I had to earn the answer. I mean, the answer's there. I just have to go and get it now.
Let me have your oldest, Alexia, if you could just come just real quick and share with us what you shared this morning. Come on, beautiful Alexa. Michael Swank's right there. He's looking at me. He says, come on, let's go do it again.
Well, from this morning, I was saying how I don't remember most of my childhood. Pretty much, I don't remember most of high school either, being at home. And I was just thinking about it and how when I got kicked out was because I lied about where I was at, because I was 19 at the time and I couldn't tell them, oh, I was at my boyfriend's house at the time. And so I got a phone call and first I get my mom telling me how you're going to have to find somewhere else to work, you're going to have to find some way to get around, and then he calls me, he's all, if you want to be a whore, you're not my daughter, and hangs up the phone. And in a way, I think that was because my boyfriend, who's my husband at the time, they took me in. And I think it was God's way of showing me what a real family was like. And I think it was his way of showing me hope. And I think I always had a little bit of hope for them, even if the world was falling apart. And now, I can't see them being separated. Then I wanted them to be divorced. I didn't like to hear my mom say she was going to commit suicide every other month. I mean, I dealt with depression and anxiety, and I almost committed suicide in junior high. And it's awful. And I remember growing up in car rides, and we did not talk, no one talked to each other. I don't remember half the vacations we went to because it was just all bad. And just recently, I went to Prescott with my dad and Dak, and I talked the whole time without any sort of filter. I was able to just open up to him that I've never was able to do before, and it was nice. And it was just, I'm happy that I can spend time with them without feeling oppressed, and it works.
Amen. Amen.
It's nice to have my daughter back too. I know there's a lot of people who just love to have that ride with their daughter.
She said to me a couple of days ago, we were somewhere, and she said to me, Mom, the thing I learned most about this is never give up.
Miss Ellie?
What I've learned through this is that we've always had God in our family, like in the house and everything, but I never really knew who He was. But with their connection, since they've grown closer to Him, I've been able to grow closer to Him. And I've been able to know who Jesus is, and He's in my life, and it just makes me so much happier.
What I love about what they're saying is because the parents changed, they saw the change.
Transformation.
They saw the transformation. And all of a sudden, what they have, they wanted. Tell me a little bit about Dakota since he's not here.
Well, and on top of that, all our kids, I've moved out, and as we transformed, they all came home. Alexia's living and her husband are living in our apartment, and Allie is coming home but getting ready to leave. And but they love being there. The house is at peace. Our house has never been at peace. Our house is at peace. Everybody enjoys each other's company. My son, as soon as he finished the semester at NAU, he comes home and he says, I'm coming home for the summer. I want to be life skilled. I see a difference in you guys. I see a difference in my sisters. I need you guys to life skill me before I get married. Well, we only had a month.
Cram.
But we learned a lot about him. We got to see things that we weren't seeing before, because now we see with different perspective of the pain that we put him through. And we can see how things were starting to go into his marriage. He got married a month ago. And our hope is that we can help him walk through this, but he's the one that has to make the change. But he said he was coming home, and he said I do, and he's never been back home.
Well, and regarding Dakota, what we need to work on is I see a lot of my behaviors revealed in Dakota that aren't as good as they should be, and so hopefully we're stopping that hand-me-down from generation to generation. But at least we'll be here for him and counsel him, and he'll be able to see it between us, and he'll know there's something. But
Absolutely. So talk a little bit then about August the 18th, 19th, and 20th, life skills, and then we'll wrap this up.
So, like I said, we knew that this was the avenue. It may have not, or this was the program, and I believed it in my heart, and we found a way to do it. And after I saw the change just in me, remember we start with the individual. When I started changing, I started getting stronger. I stopped having seizures. I could stand up for myself. Life at my job was so much better. Life with my girls, I could be honest with them. I froze my emotions. We weren't allowed to cry in my house growing up. I was never allowed to cry. And that's why there's little comments now and then about, okay, there's a tear for you. Because my daughters have not seen me cry. And it's because I don't know how to. That's something I'm frozen there, and I have to work through that and learn how to be emotional again. So we believe in life skills. We've tried everything. We've done everything. We've been everywhere. We had counseling. We spent tons of money trying to fix myself, trying to fix our marriage, and this life skills works. So in August, our facilitators are coming here to do a 3-day seminar, and it'll be just scratching the surface of what life skills is all about, but they're going to give you some tools to get started. And we actually want to give you a tool today about self-talk that we have on copies out front. And we want to talk to you more about life skills too if you're interested. But this is life-changing. And I was thinking, Christ alone, our cornerstone. Whenever we sing that, it was like, that's our song. Through the storm, we're here. We made it through, and the bondage has been broken. I'm free. I have never been more free in my life. I'm free to love everybody. I've forgiven the people that have hurt me in my past, and I don't look back. I can see my mom. I'm working really hard. She's not well. She's dealing with a lot of anxiety, and my goal. I quit my job so I can go back and help her and walk her through this. And life skills is the answer to a lot of pain, not just your marriage, where you've come from, generational.
And she talked about the forgiveness portion of it, because healing through my wounds as a child actually allows me to forgive others. You know, if we want to be forgiven, we have to truly forgive others as well. And so I need to be like Christ. I want to be forgiven because I've screwed up a lot. And but man, I've never experienced the ability to forgive somebody like I have since I've been healed from my wounds.
This program is 100% biblical. It will follow the Bible all the way through, scriptural, renewing your mind, the DNA, what a man thinketh, so all the way through. But it is not denominational. It is open to everyone, and they try to keep that very clear because they want the people who have been wounded by the church. And I was one of those. I was wounded 34 years ago. I was wounded, and I never went back. For 30 years, I was out of the church. And if somebody was going to come and start shoving God down my throat, I was out of there. And when I went in there, you know, I didn't know what to expect because we were all new to it. And she made it very clear that we're about the individual. We're working you through this. But it's all very, very, very biblical. And I was just thinking, it doesn't matter denomination. My husband's a Mormon. And I was watching him as he was talking earlier, and he was throwing those hands everywhere. And I'm going, oh my goodness, he's become Pentecostal, right?
Didn't see him raise his hands as we're singing. Wow. This is, you know. But for me, to you guys, I'm so excited. But most importantly, I'm so proud.
So proud of you.
Spending time with you, Dawn, and when you started becoming not only transparent, and then you started working the tools, and you were talking about it, how you need to continue. It's not just a one-time thing and then it's over. We need to do this, and that's what the Bible talks about. You know, renew your mind daily, among other things. So when we became born-again believers, it just doesn't end there. There's much more. It says, work out your salvation. So there's work we have to do. And so I just thank you, and I'm so excited for you guys. I'm proud of you. I love what your daughters, what they've said with Dakota. I'm sure what he's thinking. I know him. It's just encouraging.
I just want to also share that I feel this is the miracle because the families are hurting and there's pressure. And people need a hope to hang on to. And it's Jesus. We can't put Jesus in a box of how this is going to pan out or what this is going to look like. But God has chosen this venue to bring liberty, to heal your body. That is the anointing of Christ. Bind up your wounds, heal the brokenhearted. And what I loved mostly was that it was the discipleship part, that you're not left alone to walk through this. And I want to call it the rewiring of your brain.
Right.
And we call it renewing, but there are scientific facts that when you begin to rewire your brain from the woundedness, how the chains are broken, how the freedom comes, and how God has manifested His presence on this situation. And you guys are truly a miracle. I mean, I've known you for 4 or 5 years. I know where you've come from, and you, just the desperation of where you were 9 months ago.
It's called football prayers.
Yeah.
Well,
she knows what that means.
I definitely know I'm a miracle. There's no doubt I'm a miracle.
But also on top of that, I'm sorry, Pastor, is that there was a lot of prayers, and I know this church was really, really praying for me, and I really appreciate it, and I thank Kathleen. She gave me everything she had, and Jennifer took me in, and Mima's been by my side all the way through, and I just love this family.
Amen. Let me just share with you, amen.